Okay, time for a story. This next series of events evidently occurred at some point while they were wandering. I don't know when. I don't know if it was in year 1, year 10, year 20, year 40, or when it was. But this is happening sometime during that 40-year period. My guess is pretty early, but I really don't know. Korah, son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi. Remember, the Kohathites were the branch of the Levites that got to carry the artifacts or the utensils that were used in the tabernacle. Now, they didn't get to touch them. The priests had to touch them and wrap them up in these layers of cloths and all that, and coverings. So the Kohathites themselves couldn't actually touch these things. They just got to carry. That was considered to be an honor. That was considered to be a special privilege. Now, I read that and I kind of think they're being kind of stuck in the role of, slaves. Very close to it. But it was supposed to be a privilege and an honor to have that responsibility of carrying the stuff, even if you couldn't actually touch it. That's who these people are. Some of them. This is not the whole clan of the Kohathites. This is not all the Kohathites. But this is someone within the clan of the Kohathites. This is Korah, son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi. And I don't know that genealogy is complete or if we're skipping. One of the things about these genealogies is that you can never be certain how complete they are, because they can and do skip generations. And certain Reubenites, Dathan and Abiram, sons of Eliab, and On, son of Peleth, became insolent and rose up against Moses. With them were 250 Israelite men, well-known community leaders who had been appointed members of the council. This is pretty serious. This is a mutiny. They came as a group to oppose Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You have gone too far. The whole assembly is holy. The whole community is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is with them. Why then do you set yourselves above the Lord's assembly?" And they didn't do that. Moses and Aaron did no such thing. God himself made these appointments and assigned these men these positions. Moses and Aaron did not assign themselves these positions. They did not set themselves above the Lord's assembly. If they are above the Lord's assembly, it's only because the Lord himself has chosen them, not because they've done anything. When Moses heard this, he fell face down. Then he said to Korah and all his followers, "In the morning the Lord will show who belongs to him and who is holy, and he will have that person come near him. The man he chooses he will cause to come near him. You, Korah, and all your followers are to do this. Take censers, and tomorrow put fire and incense in them before the Lord. The man the Lord chooses will be the one who is holy. You Levites have gone too far." So we're not the ones who have gone too far. You're the ones who have gone too far. You're the ones who are being presumptuous here. Moses also said to Korah, "Now listen, you Levites. Is it not enough for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the rest of the Israelite community and has brought you near himself to do the work of the Lord's tabernacle and to stand before the community and minister to them? He has brought you and all your fellow Levites near himself, but now you are trying to get the priesthood too." So they were not content with the roles they were given. They wanted more than that. "It is against the Lord that you and all your followers have banded together. Who is Aaron that you should grumble against him?" So their problem isn't really with Moses and Aaron. Their problem is with God. They did not get the level of responsibility and importance that they felt they should get, and that is the heart of the issue. Remember that in this region of the world, it was common for the firstborn son, whether or not he was the actual, literal, physical firstborn, or he was a son who was given that assignment, someone else in the birth order who was his father's favorite and received that assignment. It was the role of that son, that person, the next family head, basically, to handle a lot of the religious duties within the family. Which is probably why these Reubenites, because Reuben was the actual firstborn son of Jacob, Dathan, Abiram, and On, probably the reason why they're joining in this rebellion is because they feel like their privileged spot as sons of the actual firstborn of Jacob has been taken away through God's assignment of the Levites. We talked about this redemption idea, that the price of Israel's freedom from Egypt was the death of the Egyptian son, the firstborn Egyptian sons and animals. And so to make them, so God is going to have the Israelites pay for that by dedicating their own firstborn sons. But He's not going to make them do that. He's going to take the Levites instead, and then they actually had to transfer, every Levite male to every firstborn son in the community, and then whatever, there were a few more firstborn sons left over. They literally paid a value of money to ransom them away from their duties. And this was actually taking away some of these men's duties as a family representative before God and giving it to the Levites, which is probably why the Reubenites are involved, or some of the Reubenites at least, are involved in this rebellion. And Korah and his people wanted more than just to carry the stuff around. They wanted the priesthood. They wanted to be the representatives of God in a way that they didn't feel they could be if they had just been assigned to do all the grunt work of carrying things around on their shoulders. Then Moses summoned Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab. These are the Reubenites here. But they said, "We will not come. Isn't it enough that you have brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in this desert?" So they're calling Egypt now the land flowing. They're so far gone in their rebellion, they're calling Egypt the land of milk and honey. And now you also want to lord it over us? Moreover, you haven't brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, or given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. And they're refusing to acknowledge that it was their own lack of faith that led them to this predicament. That's what people do. That's the sort of situation people can get themselves in. When you're so far down in your spirit of defiance and sin and rebellion, you just can't see anything right. Everything is everybody's fault but your own. As far as these guys are concerned, it's Moses' fault that they're out here. It's Moses' fault that they're not living wonderful lives back in Egypt. Moses' fault that they're not living wonderful lives in the Promised Land. Moses' fault that they've lost their privileges as the firstborn sons of Israel. As far as they're concerned, this is everybody's fault but their own. Will you gouge out the eyes of these men? No, we will not come. Then Moses became very angry and said to the Lord, "Do not accept their offerings. I have not taken so much as a donkey from them, nor have I wronged any of them." So Moses is saying, I haven't done anything to you. Aaron hasn't done anything to you. We've done nothing. Whenever your gripe is, it's not with us. We haven't done a thing. Moses said to Korah. So there's Korah and his guys, and then the Reubenites, Dathan and Abiram, and they're linked, but they're not together here. Like they're sharing in the rebellion, but their purposes are a little bit different. They don't seem to be completely together here. So Dathan and Abiram apparently are in their tents or something, and the Korah apparently is there with Moses. Moses said to Korah, "You and all your followers are to appear before the Lord tomorrow, you and they and Aaron. Each man is to take his censer." Now these would be like fire pans that you put coals in to light and make fire, and put incense in it, 250 censers in all, and present it before the Lord. You and Aaron are to present your censers also. So each man took his censer, or fire pan, put fire and incense in it, and stood with Moses and Aaron at the entrance to the tent of meeting. This is obviously the next day when they're doing this. When Korah had gathered all his followers in opposition to them, and Moses and Aaron, at the entrance to the tent of meeting, the glory of the Lord appeared to the entire assembly. I'm assuming as a cloud, like it normally does. I'm assuming. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Separate yourselves from this assembly so that I can put an end to them at once." So he is once again threatening to annihilate the entire assembly of Israel. But Moses and Aaron fell face down and cried out, "O God, God of the spirits of all mankind, will you be angry with the entire assembly when only one man sins?" They weren't all part of this. It was Korah and his dudes who were doing this. The entire assembly wasn't responsible for this. Then the Lord said to Moses, say to the assembly, move away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Moses got up and went to Dathan and Abiram. Now he summoned them previously. They didn't come. Now he's going to them. And the elders of Israel followed him. He warned the assembly, move back from the tents of those wicked men. Do not touch anything belonging to them, or you will be swept away because of all their sins. So they moved away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Dathan and Abiram had come out and were standing with their wives, their children, and their little ones at the entrances to their tents. Then Moses said, this is how you will know the Lord has sent me to do all these things, and that it was not my idea. If these men die a natural death and experience only what usually happens to men, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord brings about something totally new, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them with everything that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the grave, or Sheol, as we will see down here in the footnotes, then you will know that these men have treated the Lord with contempt. As soon as he finished saying all this, the ground under them split apart, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them, with their households and all Korah's men and all their possessions. They went down alive into the grave, or Sheol, with everything they owned. The earth closed over them, and they perished and were gone from the community. At their cries, so they were screaming as they went down, all the Israelites around them fled, shouting, the earth is going to swallow us too! And fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering the incense. So judgment has fallen on the rebels. The men who led the rebellion and their families, even their children, even their infants, were punished by God for their rebellion, by having the earth literally swallow them up. I'm picturing, when I hear this, I picture, first of all, a kind of an earthquake. I don't think this is a normal earthquake. He said something totally new. Okay, so I don't think it's just a regular earthquake. I'm picturing like a huge... Of course, everything eats by putting something in its mouth and chewing. But I'm picturing like a giant fish that just kind of like opens its mouth and just like swallows something. You know, fish are freaky. Fish are freaky to me. I remember, I go to these fishing ponds or whatever. I remember when we went to the botanical gardens with my nieces for the first time back when they were like 4 or 5 years old, and they like to feed the fish that are there in the botanical gardens. So there's these little dispensers of fish food near there that you can put coins into and get little fish pellets out or whatever, fish food pellets. And of course they even had some pet fish for a while. And just the way they just like open their mouths and just like consume their food is just freaky to me. And then you have all these ugly yellow fish. They're hovering floating up near the surface of the water. And they just kind of like open their mouths. They don't have teeth, and they just kind of like open their mouths and try to get something to go in it. And that's the visual that I have, It may be, the picture may be like a lion eating something, but a lion would like tear into something. A lion would bite into it, use its teeth to bite it and chew it up. I'm picturing more like a fish that just kind of like opens its mouth and just swallows it. That's the imagery that I get. Sheol was the realm of the dead. So these people are going into the grave alive. Obviously they're not alive once they go into the grave. And it was a shadowy underground area. And I believe in this point in time they believed that the underworld was literally under the ground. And so it is a shadowy, unknown area of the dead, around the realm of the dead, where everyone actually went there when they died. And so, the Korah. Now, I don't know how many members of the families were behind the rebellion. The Korah and the leaders were. I don't know how involved their wives were, or their kids, or their infants. They all got punished for it. I don't know how responsible all of them were, but they were all punished for it. But they all went into the grave alive after the grave swallowed them up. And that would, of course, have served as a... I talked about how the visual of Sodom and Gomorrah's judgment and the fire and brimstone that came out of heaven, and then the smoke that rose up from them the morning after that Abraham saw from a distance when he looked down that direction, how much that imprinted itself onto their memory as an image of judgment forever after. And this would too. This image of Sheol opening its mouth and receiving the dead in it like this would have imprinted itself into their consciousness, their collective conscious here also at this point in time, from this point forward. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest." Now Aaron is still alive at this point. This is his son, who will be the high priest someday when Aaron dies. "To take the censers out of the smoldering remains, and scatter," that'd be of course of the men who got burned up, "and scatter the coals some distance away. For the censers are holy, the censers of the men who sinned at the cost of their lives. Hammer the censers into sheets to overlay the altar, for they are presented before the Lord and have become holy. Let them be a sign to the Israelites." So some good is going to come out of this. They're going to take these censers, which these sinful men offered, which have now been made holy through these sinful men's deaths, and they're going to hammer them into sheets and overlay them on top of the altar as an additional reminder to the people to treat the things of God with the respect that they deserve. So Eleazar the priest collected the bronze censers brought by those who had been burned up, and he had them hammered out to overlay the altar, as the Lord directed him through Moses. This was to remind the Israelites that no one, except a descendant of Aaron, should come to burn incense before the Lord, or he would become like Korah and his followers. The next day, the whole Israelite community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. "You have killed the Lord's people," they said. So they still don't like these guys. But when the assembly gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron and turned toward the tent of meeting, suddenly the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. Again, the form of a cloud. Then Moses and Aaron went to the front of the tent of meeting, and the Lord said to Moses, "Get away from this assembly, so I can put an end to them at once." And they fell face down. We've heard him say this before several times now. Then Moses said to Aaron, "Take it." So he's not necessarily making intercession for them this time. Not in the way that he had before. Excuse me. Okay, I'm not going to be able to do that. Then Moses said to Aaron, "Take your censer and put incense in it, along with fire from the altar, and hurry to the assembly to make atonement for them. Wrath has come out from the Lord. The plague has started." So he actually is now following through on his threat to destroy these people. He has sent some kind of a plague to work its way through the community. So Aaron did as Moses said, and ran to the midst of the assembly. The plague had already started among the people. But Aaron offered the incense and made atonement for them. He stood between the living and the dead, and the plague stopped. But 14,700 people died from the plague, in addition to those who had died because of Korah, 250. Then Aaron returned to Moses at the entrance to the tent of meeting, for the plague had stopped. So God was actually starting to follow through in his promise this time to annihilate them. It was only after they offered the fire or after the incense, I should say, with the fire, that the plague stopped after working its way through 14,700 of them.